With the evaluation process pretty much done and the NFL draft just around the corner, it's my pleasure to catch up with my good friend, has broadcasted games with me on the Monmouth Digital Network from Football Gameplan. It's the czar of the playbook, Emory Hunt. Emory, how you doing today, man?
Doing fine, man. It's funny because today is just like the day before, and it will be like the day after. Every day has been the same, but I'm enjoying myself.
Well, the one thing that changes is which Raging Cajuns hoodie that you rock, right? You got a good rotation going.
Exactly. Red, gray, and black. I need to find myself a white one. But, it's funny. You could tell when I did certain videos because of the day I have a different sweatshirt on.
Right, like you'll watch back and say, "Oh, that was a Wednesday one.
That
That
was a
was a
Wednesday,
Wednesday one."
right?
Well, Emory, obviously we're all working from home, working remotely with everything that's going on. It's going to drastically affect the NFL draft later this week. Part of your whole football schedule after the busy fall of broadcasting is all of the evaluation that you do. You have that unique opportunity to see kind of both sides of things. We're going to be talking about the Monmouth University football prospects using rankings from your football game plan scouting prospect guide. Before we talk about that, you evaluated what's the number? Because it is a ton of guys as you were getting ready for the NFL draft.
Yeah, it was 689. I wanted to get to 700, but just couldn't quite get there. And it's an impressive thing that we do every year. And this was the first year we actually was able to put out a draft guide, because what you see in the draft guide is actually the notes that I have written down, these four big binders here in my office, where, that's where we used to put our notes and just put videos out, just representing just the grade. But now people get to get behind the curtain a little bit, see what the actual strengths and areas of improvements and the attributes that we, place on the player and how we're coming about that, the games that we watched on the player. And so they get to see the whole process. And we're excited about it. It was the first time we were able to put our written notes into digital form, which probably took a little bit longer because it was the first time to usually get the grades out, because my grades are usually done before the combine. This year, I had to wait until after the combine to finish the safeties. But for the most part, 90% of the guide was done prior to the combine. I just wanted to get it all out before, but the safeties I had to wait, because I ran into the combine, had to go out there and then come back and finish the safeties when I got back here in Jersey. So it was fun to put together. And you're talking about prospects from the first thing is not about like how you see a lot of these other mock drafts. Well, our mock drafts are draft guys where they talk about the 10 prospects in detail, and then prospects 11 through 50 is just names.
Right.
No, everybody that is in this guide has a scouting report. So it doesn't matter if it's the first guy or the last guy. Everyone is treated equally, evaluated, and it's the only draft guide out there that gives you this much information. You talk about 782 pages, so it's a great piece of content, not only for the draft, but even after the draft, to see where guys sign and end up and things of that nature.
Yeah, that'll be the interesting thing to see where guys end up, whether it's through the draft or through free agent signings, and then to go back through, read your evaluation, and then see how that fits into whatever team they join, which is always interesting to me. It's all about fit, right? When we talk about where these guys end up. And we're fortunate enough now to be able to talk about some of the Monmouth prospects that you have in the guide. But before we get to them, where can people find the draft guide that we're going to be that we are going to be referencing today?
They can find it at footballgameplan.com/2020 draft guide.
Perfect. That's exactly where you need to be, because Emory and I are going to go over. He has 5 Monmouth Hawks prospects rated in the guide, not just from an evaluation standpoint, but Emory over the last couple of years, and I have had a chance to broadcast some Monmouth games together. So he's seen these guys up close and personal, both at home and on the road. And we're going to start our conversation about these Monmouth prospects, Emory, with not to slight any other position on the field, but you've got to find the quarterback. Monmouth was fortunate enough the last couple of years to have one of the best quarterbacks in FCS football in Kenji Bahar. You have Kenji as the 7th rated quarterback in the 2020 NFL draft. And I know a guy that you've had a chance to talk to, watch grow, watch develop. What about Kenji do you like the most?
Just that maturity, that growth and development that you saw in this game. He played a lot of football at Monmouth, and every game that I saw him play live, starting with that Bucknell game back in 2017, I believe it was, or 16, maybe 17, But it was impressive to see how calm he was. He never got rattled. And to see that and watch that continue to grow, and that was a fixture of his game, shows you that he has the right temperament to play the position. And once you add in all the physical attributes, he can throw anywhere on the field he can get the ball to. He's accurate. He's athletic. I think he made that known that, hey, people sleep on my athleticism. I can get out there and run if I have to. I just choose not to. But when he does, have the ability to pick him up and put him down pretty quickly. So he has the whole skill set that you want at the position. The mentality is where it needs to be. He's shown that leadership out there on the field, and a guy that, to me, that just doesn't get rattled. And if you're not able to be rattled, that's the quarterback that I would want on my team. I don't care about how strong your arm is or how fast you can run or how tall you are, or anything like that. Can you handle pressure? And if you can handle pressure, I can win with you. And that's why my quarterback rankings tend to look a little different than the majority, because I value situational football more so than anything.
And when you talk that and Kenji, the year he had this year, 30 touchdowns, over 3,500 yards, and really rewrote the Monmouth record book, and did so in some pretty wild atmospheres. You and I broadcasted the game at Western Michigan. That was a fantastic atmosphere. To go to Montana and have the game that he did, Lonnie Moore, Terrence Green, the combination of them was so dangerous, but Kenji made play after play in that game. And then to go and play James Madison, who I think have the two best defensive ends that you could team up in FCS football. And he played and did well in some pretty wild atmospheres. And then to hear that through all of the evaluation process, he was a guy that was trending in the right direction really the whole season, and then through now the postseason, getting ready for what will be his next step.
Yeah, you talk about him in those games, and whether it was a win or a loss, when you saw the team lose, it wasn't, well, they lost because any better quarterback played. It never was that. And you can't say that about a lot of the prospects that are getting a lot more pub nationally. When you watch certain guys play, you like, man, if they only had better play there, they would have won. You never saw that or said that about Kenji Bahar. And I just think that he's an underrated player in his draft class. I'm glad I had the ability to watch him grow and develop and see the good work that he put in, but also that those coaches down there at Monmouth were able to put onto him and allow him to really blossom into the player he became.
Like we mentioned, Emory likes him so much that he has him as the number 7 rated quarterback available for the NFL draft. More FCS guys, Emory, have gotten the chance to shine at the next level at the quarterback position. More of them have done well. There was always that one example, but now you're seeing more guys get drafted, make rosters, and in your belief, Kenji could be one of those guys, and I believe he is your highest rated FCS quarterback, which shows a lot for how you feel about him.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you watch him play. He plays a game like how Teddy Bridgewater played at Louisville. Just a calm game, an efficient game. Doesn't put the team in bad spots. He's always making the plus play and keeping that offense ahead of the chains. And it showed this year with the amount of points Monmouth was able to score.
And that Monmouth offense, like you mentioned, was so explosive, and one of the biggest reasons was Kenji Bahar. If you want to put Kenji as 1, you got to put 1A as the next prospect we'll talk about, and it's running back Pete Guerriero, who came out a year early for the NFL draft after being the best running back in FCS football. Pete, the self-made guy, didn't come to Monmouth as a football player, turned himself into the best running back in the country, and a player that I think is very intriguing when you factor in that the full body of work, Emory, you see, it was just in 3 years, but in those 3 years, did things that
and you think about him in scope of this season, 5 yards away from 2,000 yards, and you think, oh, he's a one-hit wonder. But when you go back and look throughout his film, 1,000 yards, I want to say as a freshman or close to it, or either or as a sophomore. I don't know which year it was. I know one year he came up just about 80-something yards short of 1,000, and one year he went over 1,000. So he's been productive for 3 straight years. He was an all-conference player multiple times as a running back and also as a track runner. So when you factor in the track part to his football skills, I think he is a very good prospect. And not only because he can hit the home run, that's evident because he has legit track speed. And he also can, be of value on special teams. And people will say, well, he didn't return a lot. Well, they didn't ask him to. He did earlier in his career. That doesn't mean he can't do it. And when you have that speed like he does, it automatically makes you one of the better kickoff returners in football. So, yes, he can contribute on special teams. He can catch the ball out of the backfield, and he has the ability to hit the home run. And he's a guy that doesn't need volume to make an impact. And we saw that against James Madison. It was the first carry of the game, 95-yard touchdown. That's the type of impact a guy like him can have on your offense. So I'm a big fan of his game. Love that he was able to go out there this year in adverse situations, because the injury depth, was not there for, which has normally been there for Monmouth. They usually have 3 guys they could count on. This year, guys got hurt, and they really needed Pete not to get hurt. And he didn't get hurt, showed that he was durable, and also showed that he still had the knack for making a big play.
Yeah, you mentioned it, just short of 2,000 yards, but really, I think the really impressive stat was 298 carries. Like you said, showed that durability, still averaged almost 7 yards a carry. And you go back to his kick return prowess that he showed as a younger player in his first year. How about these numbers? 6 kick returns, 228 yards, averaging about 40 yards a return. Obviously, it was limited, but what you know is that he can make big plays. And in this game, in the NFL today, of space and of, can you make guys miss? Do you have that ability? That's what you look for when you evaluate a running back, is can they take it to the house?
And you look at him in the scope of, can it translate? The one thing that translates is speed instantly, and he has that. You've seen that against Western Michigan. You've seen that against James Madison, you talked about those 2 defensive ends. They have a pro prospect out there at corner as well. So they have talent up there to where you can say, okay, that's comparable. He can match up. And so his speed translates. And you wonder, okay, well, what else can he do that can add value to the NFL level? Well, we talked about his return ability. We talked about his ability to catch the football. So everything that he did at Monmouth definitely translates to the NFL. And when I spoke with him, he made a great point. He talked about, why this was the right time for him to go, was he put a lot of productivity on film already, and he just came off nearly a 2,000-yard season with 298 carries with no injury. So he was like, you know what? I better strike while the iron is hot health-wise. And, I had a lot of carries with no injuries. He said it's the best his body has felt. So why go through that ringer again and risk getting hurt or something like that? I put a lot out there on film. I'm ready to go out there and take my chances at the next level. I thought that was a really good answer. And it made sense. I mean, rarely do you see a guy with that volume come away unscathed. But I guess when you run away from everybody, you don't get tackled a lot. You tend to do that,
Yeah, when they're chasing you, I guess it makes it easier when he's in front of them. And you mentioned the incredible productivity that Pete had and got stronger, as you mentioned, every single year in college, where his first year, if he wasn't breaking the big run, might have went down on first contact, where now he's bouncing off guys. There was the big play early in the year at Wagner where Monmouth had a comeback win. Lonnie Moore scored the game-winning touchdown, but Pete ran over a guy at the goal line to kind of wake Monmouth up and got them rolling. So interesting to see where he fits into today's NFL. Will stay on the offensive side of the ball. And Pete's got one skill you can't teach. I guess all these players do. Kenji's leadership and cool and calmness. Pete's speed. Well, something you can't teach is size and height. And Shawn Clark, Monmouth tight end, 6'8", 245. You can't teach that. Emory, is your number 10 rated inline tight end. So first, why don't you explain to the fans what you mean by that ranking specifically, and then what you like about Shawn?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one of the unique parts of the draft guide, is the fact that you just can't rank certain positions 1 through 10, because you can't rank Kelvin Johnson and Cole Beasley in the same ranking, because they play 2 different positions. Tight end is the same way. You got your inline tight ends, which are guys that are traditionally more your blockers, or guys that are really good blockers that you can trust out there next to the tackle as a blocker, but also has the capability of going down the field and running routes. You have your H-backs, which are guys that are sort of a cross between your fullback and tight end. They're a little bit more athletic. They can block, but you kind of like that athleticism out there on the move and in space. They're actually very good blockers in space. And then you have your flex guys, which are essentially your bigger wide receivers that can go out wide and legitimately match up versus corners or safeties and win those battles. So we break our tight end position down into 3 positions: inline, flex, and H-back. And what I like about Shawn, coming from Monmouth, he can block because Coach Callahan will ask his tight ends to block first and do everything else second. So the blocking is there. The receiving part, I think, is underrated because, again, it's not that he can't do it, it's that he wasn't asked to do it. We saw him get utilized a little bit more in the passing game this year, more so than years previous. And when I was down at the College Gridiron Showcase in January, seeing him exclusively running routes and working in the passing game, I thought he had really good body control for a guy that's 6'8", which is very hard to do. You look at some receivers that are 6'4" that have a really hard time gearing down and changing directions or getting in and out of their cuts. Shawn didn't have a problem with that running against linebackers and safeties. So I think there's some upside value there as a receiver at the next level.
You mentioned the coaching he receives, and it goes from Coach Callahan all the way on down. And this is a program that has experience churning out NFL prospects, and Shawn's the latest in this position group that is a really talented one. It was Monmouth's first draft pick years ago in John Nalbone. Hakeem Vallis was in the NFL as well, started as a wide receiver, converted to tight end. It would kind of make sense that he's the next guy in line. And like we mentioned at the top of this breakdown with Shawn, you can't teach that kind of size. And I know there's not a lot of film of him going up the ladder in the red zone, but you can utilize size, not just going up over the top, right? It's not only the skill that size brings to the table.
Right. And you look at his frame, I think he still has room to add more weight too. And really thicken out and really be a force in line. And when you look at that size, let's look at it in the scope of him being a blocker. It's hard to get around big bodies, and if you are a guy that has that height and also has the ability to extend with that length, you're able to reach block, you're able to get out there on the perimeter and just wall guys off and pin guys inside. So you are an asset in a run game. And just being a big body in the passing game is essentially you're just playing high post inside the red zone. Sometimes you just go out there, just run, a short stick route and just turn around and just post a guy up and have the quarterback just throw it somewhere where they know you can go jump and get it, as opposed to a defensive back trying to reach around you and make a play. So he does have some ability to be effective in the passing game as a blocker, and also has the upside to gain weight, because he gained a lot of weight from when he got into Monmouth. I think he was like 190 when he got there. Now he's up to 245. He put on the right weight, and he still has that frame that you can see perhaps getting up to 260, maybe 265 without losing his athleticism.
Yeah, he added the good weight, not the kind of weight that I'm putting on over here. He added the right kind of weight, which is
not
good.
that pandemic weight, right?
Exactly, right. We keep it moving now. Those are the 3 offensive guys that are in Emory's football game plan scouting prospect guide from Monmouth University, but there are 2 on the defensive side of the ball as well. And one of the biggest things to me this year, yes, you had the explosive Monmouth offense, but one of the reasons the Monmouth made the playoffs for the second time in 3 years, got to 11 wins, was a much improved defensive side of the ball. Some of the themes we've already talked about, leadership, experience, they really, I think, showed themselves in your highest rated Monmouth defensive player, and it's the 5th-year senior cornerback, Tymere. He's your 13th rated field corner. Like you did with tight ends, you broke down the defensive backs as well on the corner. So again, for the fans that are watching, that are maybe curious about what that means specifically, break down field corner, and then what do you like about Tymere?
It's interesting when you're talking about field and boundary, because a lot of people ask that question because they may look at it a different way. It may mean something different to them. And so I had to explain this, multiple times for people, because the way I see it is different than what some people may understand it to be. So for your boundary corner, I think your boundary corner should be the guy that, is the one that's on the short side of the field, that probably needs to use the sideline a little bit more as a help defender. Very physical corner, one that does a great job pressing and rerouting and riding, a receiver toward the sideline and able to pin him to the side. And one that's very strong in run support, from the short side of the field. Not afraid. He's usually a tough guy, a more physical guy. The field corner can be all those things the boundary guy is, but you trust him a little bit more athletically in a wide space area. This is a guy that is a little bit more twitchy than your boundary corner, in my opinion. One that can handle playing off coverage, one that you can trust playing man. Obviously, he's going to need some safety help because he's playing the field side, but you like the athleticism a little bit more on the field side. And the slot corner is obviously, that's self-explanatory, somebody that can really match up inside and just, dance with the slot receiver and really mirror his movements. And one that's probably a really good blitzer as well. So you want that quickly coming off the edge, but from the slot position. So that's the boundary, field, and slot corner. And what I like about Tymere Berry on the field side, I think he has pretty good athleticism. I like how he's able to, just really run with the receivers. He's technically savvy. He uses his hands well. He knows how to, plant and drive on the football and break it up, and he competes hard out there. And when you're out there on the field side, on the wide side of the field, you're going to have to, fight back into some battles because it can get spacious out there. And if you don't have the athleticism, you're going to get burned. And, and I know that's, maybe one of the questions, people want to have about the cornerback position. Well, what's his recovery speed? That's something that you can have about any corner out there, but you like that he competes well. He knows when and where to take chances. So he's comfortable with his own skill set, knowing that, hey, maybe I can't make this play, so I'm not going to be as aggressive. But the one that I know I can make, I'm, heading that way 100 miles an hour and making the play. So, and he also had a really good week from what I heard out at the Hula Bowl this past January.
Yeah, and we got the same feedback from both he and Kenji, actually, who were both out there in Hawaii. And one of the things about Tymere that was always impressive is the way that he played, right? In high school, he was a playmaker, made plays with the ball, also played defense, kind of did everything. In the limited ability, you could see he does have that athleticism, like you said, had an interception return for a touchdown against Kennesaw State this year, which was the biggest play in that game. But beyond that, Monmouth plays in a league that has multiple option teams. They played up. So he's played a variety of competition. So it's interesting that your ranking, right, takes all that into account. He was a high productivity guy who had to play against triple option Kennesaw State, but also played against those big tight ends up at Montana, the lightning quick receivers at Western Michigan, everyone else that the Big South had to offer. So saw a little bit of everything. It's not like he played in a league where everyone just threw it every down. He had to come up and run support, but also was trusted to go and sometimes have to take away a side of the field.
Yeah, you think about that game against Western Michigan, and yeah, those guys were fast, but they were also taller targets. And I thought he matched up well against these taller receivers. So it wasn't like some people may say, oh, there's a 5'10" corner, I got to throw at him. And Tymere is closer to 6 feet.
Yeah.
But, people will look at him and say, okay, well, maybe he's not big enough to handle the rigors of playing outside at the pro level. That's neither here nor there for someone to say, but from what I viewed and from what you viewed as well, he doesn't get mossed, so to speak. He doesn't get big boyed out there on a perimeter. He can play with bigger receivers. We've seen it time and time again by Tymere Berry.
And the last rated player on the defensive side for Monmouth, it's their 5th prospect that you have in your football game plan scouting prospect guide. And it's a player who, like some of the other guys we talked about, got better every single year he was at Monmouth. The reason the defense was so much improved this year, one of the reasons is how improved this guy's play was. And it's your number 32 ranked linebacker in the upcoming draft class at the inside linebacker spot in Evan Powell. And Evan this year showed a true game-breaking ability to make big plays on the defensive side, impactful turnover plays, tackles in the backfield, and a guy that maybe a couple of years ago, he wouldn't have been this way, but made himself into a guy that now is being considered at the next level.
Right, and I think because you saw the growth in this game and you saw him make plays in the passing game, which is huge for the inside backer in this era of football, because people and teams are always looking to see, man, can this guy be trusted on the field all 3 downs? Do we have to take him out on the field when it's an obvious passing situation? Powell is actually an asset in that regard because he doesn't miss opportunities to make plays on the ball. And to me, if you can, score or take the ball away, I want you on my team. Those are the type of players that you want. And we saw him be able to take the ball away and, playing zone coverage really well. He's better athletically than people give him credit for. And I think, and this is something I really factored into a lot of my grades this year, because I see how critical it is at the NFL level, because, I cover the NFL as well, Giants and Jets. I'm there at practice and at the games every weekend, but I cover the entire NFL. But being a core special teamer, and that's huge, especially coming from a smaller program. You want guys that can play, obviously, the position, but can they be a core special teamer? Because that's how you get into the door. That's how you crack the 53. That's how you crack the 46 game day roster. Powell, I think, while he has good skill set to play inside backer at the next level, but also I think can be a core special teamer and really have an impact while he continue to grow into that role as an inside backer, playing regular downs, because he'll start out probably as a sub player and special teamer. And as he builds more experience in that regard, then teams will give him more responsibilities.
Now, you mentioned his ability to do a few different things, and this past year had 3 interceptions, had 6 pass defenses, forced a couple of fumbles. So doing a little bit of everything, and then, like you said, having translate to potentially special teams. You can't watch an episode of Hard Knocks, for example, which is the closest I ever got to an NFL training camp, where you didn't see that conversation behind closed doors. The coaches talking to each other. Yeah, he does this well, but what else does he do? And if that other thing is, well, you know what? He is dynamite on special teams. That puts that thought in the coach's mind, in the evaluator's mind, like, you know what? This guy has a lot of value.
Yeah, and it helps save you a roster spot, because you can look at a player like Kenji Bahar, right? Kenji can't play special teams because he's a quarterback, so he has to really be good at quarterback. We talked about, Pete Guerriero and his ability as a special teamer. So if the depth chart is stacked at running back, well, we can keep him because he can return kicks. Tymere can play boundary or the field side. So you have some versatility, but can he play special teams? Cornerbacks are your natural gunners out there on special teams. So yes, he can play special teams. And you see the same thing with Powell, is a guy that has those traits, aggressive because he's a linebacker, but also you trust him in coverage because he has a good deal of sense of how to read patterns on the fly, and then he makes plays on the ball. So maybe if your depth chart is a little bit stacked, or you can't keep 4 linebackers, 4 inside backers, you can only keep 3, but you have a spot available for special teams. You're like, man, all right, we can keep 4 because I know this guy will help us out on game day because he can play special teams.
It's all about how you find your way onto those rosters. And I know we're all excited about what's happening later this week with the draft. You mentioned it in your answer kind of 2 things ago, but you don't just watch FCS, FBS, NFL. You watch it all. And that's why I think these rankings are so unique. And you also do great work for The Athletic as well. But so much of your rankings take all of that into account. In a given year, how much football would you say you watch? You ever quantify it?
Yeah, I do. Because actually my draft process starts in May. It may not start this year in May, because
hopefully.
Well, it's too late now because we're already at the end. So usually my May trip that kicks off my 2021 draft season, the next draft season. I go to the U Sports East-West Bowl, which is the Canadian college football's all-star event. They play their all-star game before the season. So I'm ahead of the game seeing prospects that you'll end up seeing down at the East-West Shrine Bowl in January, because they usually have 4 Canadians that'll go and play in that game. So I'm usually up there, and this year would have been in Ottawa again. It's every 2 years they move it. So I'm always up there. I'm watching that week of practice, and I come back, attend mini camp or training camp for the Giants or Jets. And then I have the games that I call with you or for another network. And when I don't have a game that I'm calling or broadcasting, I go to one and scout one. If the game ends earlier, if our game ends earlier that we broadcast and there's a game nearby that I can get to that kicks off at night, I'll go and scout that too after I just broadcast the game. And then I'll go to all the All-Star games in January. Then the last week of January to the second week of February is all film study. So I take in a lot, from, the All-Star events and how guys move athletically. So I'm seeing a lot of guys move athletically, maybe 600 prospects total of the All-Star games. Then you see how it translates to the NFL because you cover the NFL all season. So you see what pro athleticism, pro speed, and pro roster construction looks like. So you have that idea. Then you watch the film, and now you have a more focused approach to your business and how you go about grading guys and why you are able to have so much, depth of prospect knowledge, because you know that the roster, at least let's say the back end 10 guys on the NFL roster and practice squad, is transient. So you're going to see guys come and go. You constantly see guys come and go. And you have a pretty good idea of who's on the roster now because you have a good knowledge base. So when I'm looking at a roster, let's say the Giants roster, for instance, people may say, oh, they need to draft this player. And I'm sitting there like, well, they have a guy already that's a good player on the roster that's fourth string that was there last year. They are probably expecting this guy to, move up and play. So I'm not going to give them this particular position in the draft because there's somebody on the roster. Well, the beat writers of those teams may not have that depth of knowledge of who is this guy on the back end and why are you so high on him. But because you go about your draft process the way you do, it helps give you a holistic view, a well-rounded view of just the process and players in general, which is why, I was ahead of the game on the XFL players, in addition to what I do with the, NFL, CFL, and also college football. So it's a lot of football that I see. So I would say probably I'm at maybe 30 games live, college-wise. Obviously, 16 NFL games with Giants and Jets, and then the scouting process. You got this list of 689 players, but I've probably watched about a good 800 or so prospects before I whittled that list down to 689.
So there you go, a little inside depth look of exactly how these rankings get put together. And it's not just a guy in his basement on a computer putting rankings together. As you heard from Emory, it's someone who is literally scouring the country looking for talent. And Emory, we appreciate a couple of minutes. I know you got to watch these Monmouth guys live. You've watched, as you said, hundreds of players live, and appreciate this. Look forward to your work continuing as we get to and then after the NFL draft, as these rosters get constructed, camps hopefully starting. Hopefully we get to work together in the fall as well. And, stay safe, stay healthy, and look forward to your awesome coverage with Football Game Plan. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate you, man. As always, stay safe. Don't eat a lot because you got to pace yourself. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to see you rolling this way by the time the season starts, man. But appreciate you having me on. Stay safe out there. And I'm looking forward to this draft.